Alright, you all knew it was only a matter of time. It is time to do the tier list for the stratagems, specifically dealing with the Illuminate. Now, a couple disclaimers, as always, this is probably going to change in the next week. Once the full invasion force is here, we might have new units, more biomes, all that sort of thing, so be prepared for it to change. And as always, there's biased people who have different playstyles, people who don't enjoy certain things will put the things in different places than you would. That is normal. This is simply my opinion based on trying to remove those biases, but some of them might show through. So, with that said, let's look at the tier list for stratagems. Of course, in the F tier, we have all of the mines. Now, mines in themselves are not terrible. They definitely have some use in some place, but because of their huge cooldown, and the fact that everyone else will wipe them off the map with their stratagems, they're just not useful to bring. If they lowered the cooldown a whole bunch, I would love them, especially on these tight urban maps, but the way that they are set up now, they are just not worth bringing. Same thing with the mortar. The mortar is great, undeniably great. However, with how often you're going to have units danger close to you, especially with the hordes of zombies, you're going to end up TKing a whole lot if you bring this. Please, please, please do not bring it unless it is a defense map. We've gone ahead and thrown the smoke on the bottom. We've talked about this before. Smoke does have a use. Smoke is useful in some situations. However, 99.999% of the time, it is more useful to destroy the target than it is to CC them or find a way to cover yourself rather than just taking them out. So I'm putting it down in the F tier. I still am also putting down the orbital strike for the EMS. If you're going to bring EMS, the EMS mortar is just better in every single way, so why would you ever bring this? And finally, the guided rail strike. It's not bad, it's just it has such a huge cooldown and you aren't dealing with that many big enemies, and not to mention the shields that can interfere with it, so I just don't see a use for bringing this on these maps. Onto the D tier. First up, we've got my personal favorite stratagem that gets no love. And that, of course, is the airburst rifle. It is a ton of fun. It is probably the most fun weapon in the game. However, many people don't use it enough to know how to use it without getting themselves completely blown up or blowing up other people. And again, we're dealing with danger close. There's a lot of enemies that are really close to you, so that airburst rifle, more times than not, is going to take your own team out. So for that reason, I'm going to put in the D tier. Gas rifle and gas drone, same kind of thing as I said before. Like, yes, the CC is useful, but why not just take the enemies out if you're going to be hitting them with a weapon anyways? It's just not worth the backpack slot or the weapon slot to bring them when you could bring anything else that can take them out. EMS mortar, same kind of idea. It does slow down enemies, and it is pretty good at that. However, I have seen, since it is stationary and you're dealing with hordes, oftentimes, unless you're just sitting there stationary defending it, it gets taken out pretty fast, and that's not very useful, and you don't want to sit in one spot for too long in this game, especially against the Illuminates, especially when they're calling in the heavy units and they're shooting lasers everywhere. For that reason, I'm putting it in the D tier. Tesla Tower also belongs down here for the same reason. It does good, and it does take out hordes pretty well, but it is stationary. It does team kill, especially when you're in these tight quarters in these urban areas. Your team is going to be running into the bug zapper a whole lot, and that is not good. Not to mention, it takes strays and blows up pretty easily. The big shield, as you noticed, as I've said, CC is great. It's great to have some defensives, but 99% of the time, it's better just to take the threat out. It's the same thing here. Like, the shield does its job, and it does well, especially against the big lasers. It can save your team, and it has a big radius, which is awesome. But also, like, why use that when you could literally use anything in any of the other tiers that just takes the enemies out so you don't have to worry about them anymore? Next up, we got 3 Eagles. We got the Eagle Strike, the Eagle Cluster Bomb, and the Rocket Pods. And the reason I have these so low is that, one, with shields and bugs that are currently in the game, I am seeing a lot of people miss their Eagles. Even the 500 kg seems to be having some struggling interactions with the shields. And because of that delayed call-in, I have seen so many people miss the Eagle shots and fail to destroy the targets because those shields pop back up and it causes a problem. The rocket pods, of course, like everything else, you could soften up targets with them, but why not just bring something that takes them out in one shot rather than having to soften them up first? And finally, the cluster bomb. It is super effective, especially against the zombies. But because you're in this area where there is so many buildings and so many other things, I have seen the cluster bomb lose its effectiveness because there's so much interference from the environment around you. There are simply better options. C tier. This is the tier that, yeah, these are effective. Yeah, bring them. They work. Like, there are better options out there, but these work fine enough. And for that, I'm going to put the Airburst Strike. It has a quick cooldown. It does its job effectively. However, just like the Cluster Bomb, it is prone to hitting the environment and not doing what it's supposed to, and for your teammates running into it, so be wary. Gas Strike, as we've already talked about a million times, I don't like the fact that it doesn't deal a whole lot of damage, so it's just like, yeah, you can CC these guys, or you could have just taken them out. However, because you know where the Illuminate are coming in because they're giant glowing UFOs, it is very easy to drop a Gas Strike in a pristine location and really disrupt their flow, and for that reason I've bumped this one up to C tier. I'm putting the spear down here for the same reason I brought up before. Those shields, I've seen so many people mess up shots and so many people hit the environment with the spear that it's just better to bring like a recoilless rifle or something else. The autocannon, everyone's favorite, their little baby golden child. Again, because there's so many hordes and things running up to you so fast, it is less effective than against the other units. I barely see anyone bringing the autocannon, and I think that's just because they haven't gotten used to you have to use it at a distance, and again, you're in these close quarters, you don't have that distance, and you get mobbed so fast that there are simply better options. The heavy machine gun comes into C tier because the machine guns are amazing here, and the heavy machine gun is the worst of all the machine guns. It just is not as effective. You need a lot more bullets than this thing can pump out to be able to destroy things, and it's unwieldy. And again, you're dealing with the close quarters, you're dealing with hitting the environment. It's just not as effective here. I'm sure some people do use it effectively. That's why I put it at the C tier. I just think there are better options. The rocket turret, like the other times I've brought up, those shields are a pain. They're just simply better turrets to deal with. It hits the environment. Its targeting isn't the best. So it works, it functions, it does its job. There are better options. The heavy machine gun emplacement and the anti-tank emplacement, I've put the C tier, and this one was a real struggle for me to actually place. Like, if you're doing the defense mission where you're defending the generator, these are the greatest of all time, must take. But outside of that, having to sit in one place is not great in these environments. Again, you're going to be hitting those environments, you're going to miss opportunities because the environment is going to be in your way, especially if you're in the city in these. And the anti-tank, don't get me wrong, it's amazing, and it blows up spaceships, it does everything that it's supposed to, but without being able to guard you from the front and having to be stationary, it's just limited in its uses when you could bring something that's a little bit more versatile and get the job done. The 500 kg is down here because, again, I've seen some bugs where it's not even taking out units with one hit. I don't know if that's just an interaction with the shield, but it's good. It's as good as it's ever been. It's just, there are better options, so I'm putting this down in the C tier. Guard Dog, you're going to hear me say this a lot. It does its job. It's effective, but because of those tight quarters, it's going to be hitting your own teammates a lot. That's frustrating, and there are just simply better options. Onto the B tier. First, we got the Orbital Precision Strike. This, as always, is wonderful. It hits where you tell it to hit. It's got a short cooldown. It takes down units. It can take out objectives. It's versatile. It's fun. It's worthy. The Arc Thrower. It is great for the chaff. Unlimited ammo is a ton of fun, and it's really fun to turn the electricity against the Illuminate, kind of use their own technology against them. However, it does not always function. Again, this might be a bug, but like with shields and things of that nature, I've seen it pop shields in 2 or 3 hits, and I've seen it never pop a shield. So we know that there's bugs, but because it's bugged currently, I can't justify putting it higher. It is useful, it definitely does work, but there are better options, especially since you're dealing with the bug. The Laser Cannon 99, same idea. It works how it's supposed to work. It's not great at popping shields. It has some sort of maybe buggy interactions, and they're just simply better weapons to take things down. It can take down the tripods if you hit them in the right area. They're just better weapons for doing that. Same thing as it can deal with the hordes, but there are simply better weapons for dealing with the horde. The Commando honestly is in the wrong spot. I should have bumped this up to the A tier, so I apologize. This one belongs in the A tier. The Commando, like the EAT, is amazing for getting the job done. The self-guiding rockets are super helpful, even better than the EATs possibly when dealing with the big dudes. So I think the Commando's in the wrong spot, to be honest. I'm sorry, I should have put that in A tier. Flamethrower is absolutely fun, one of the funnest weapons in the game, but you do usually have to build around it and your teammates don't necessarily like it when you're doing it, but it does absolutely melt the vote list, but it doesn't do nearly as much against the armored units as you would hope that it would do, and because there's a lot of units that fly around a lot and they're out of range and moving up and about, it's just not all that great at dealing with things as the other weapons are, so, you know, we're gonna put it in B tier. It's fun, but it's flawed. Autocannon turret and flame turret belong in this tier for the same reason. They are fun but flawed. They do what they're supposed to do, but as we keep bringing up, the environment gets in the way of the autocannon a lot, and the flamer, it either flames your own teammate or it gets swarmed and blows up, but when it blows up, it goes out in a blaze of glory, which does its job, but the machine gun turret just does that job better in every single way, so B tier. The walker suits, as you know, I am not a fan of the walker suits. I don't like the limited call-in. I don't like the long cooldowns on them. I just don't really like these at all. If it were up to me, I would put these in the F tier. I never use them, but I do know some people like them, and I can't deny that they are effective, at the very least, when you're dealing with lots of large swarms of enemies. So, like, they have a purpose, just there's a lot of things that work way better than that and don't have the huge limitations that these guys do. Rail Cannon, it's great for dealing with some of these units. It's definitely great for dealing with the big guys. It's great for dealing with the flying guys. I put it in the B tier because, like, you could just bring a Purifier and basically have the same thing as a Rail Cannon with just as much shots without having to take up a back slot weapon. But it does, of course, take out the big guys if you're using the unsafe mode and hit them in the right place. So in the hands of the right person, it can be good. But it always falls down to, well, there are other things that are better, so B tier. Grenade Launcher. Great for dealing with the hordes, not so great at dealing with the flyers. It can knock the tripods around, but it's very hard to take anything out with it. So good for the hordes, but not the best for the hordes, therefore B tier. We've got the small barrage down in here. The barrages are super useful, and we'll get into those when we're talking about the A and S tier. But this one, because it is smaller, it's not nearly as effective, so I'm putting it at the B tier. And finally, the Gatling Barrage. As always, low cooldown, it is solid, it works super well, but you can hit the environment, that can be annoying, so there are just more effective tools out there. Alright, time for the A tier, the Quasar Cannon. It's undeniably flexible, it leaves you a backpack slot, it has unlimited ammo, it can knock out the tripods if you hit them in the right place. You can use it for blowing up the big guys if they're really annoying you, but they're really hard to hit because they fly around and move a lot. So it is undeniably powerful and versatile, but it doesn't always one-shot, so you gotta be pretty good with it. You gotta make sure that you're aiming and heating it up correctly, because if you miss, it can take 2-3 shots to take down a tripod if you're not landing them like you should. The recoilless rifle can of course take them down in one shot, but it requires a backpack slot, so you're dedicated to that. And that can be hard when you're dealing with the hordes of enemies, but it's still useful usually to have someone to have one of these. My preference is the EATs, that way you can bring a machine gun, and you can still have the anti-tank when you need it. I think the EAT strategy is the best strategy on this map, but the Commando can of course be substituted for that as well. That's why the Commando, again, should have been up here in A tier with the other anti-tanks. The machine gun turret and the Gatling turret rock. They absolutely decimate the hordes as they should. They throw down suppressing fire. They take out the armored units. They have relatively short cooldowns. These guys absolutely are the GOATs when it comes to these maps. Everyone should be bringing one of these. They kick absolute butt. Then we've got a couple of the backpacks. Backpacks, of course, are very strong. I don't necessarily have the resupply backpack at the highest tier, simply because there are so many supplies on these maps that I don't think most people are going to find themselves running low on supplies. But also having a shield is super helpful for dealing with those giant plasma blasts. I can't tell you how many times a shield has saved my life. But again, it does require a backpack slot, so it is not the best of the best, but it is a super fun and valid playstyle against the squids. Napalm Strike and Eagle Strafing Run are both powerful, great for dealing with hordes, great for crowd control plus damage, lots of uses. They are simply solid choices. Again, you will hit the environment with these a little bit, but I feel like they're a lot easier to aim than the other ones, and they hit a much larger area, so you are much less likely to lose complete effectiveness due to the environment on these ones. Finally, the walking barrage, it's a little bit more powerful than the small barrage. However, the things don't tend to be in perfect little lines from what I've found, unless you manage to get like the entire horde chasing you. You can throw it down and walk the barrage through the horde. I just find it not as effective as the other barrages, and that is why it is not S tier. And now we are in the S tier, the best of the best. You should always be bringing one of these, if not multiple of these, on these maps against the Illuminate. They kick absolute butt. First, we have the Stalwart and the Machine Gun. Bullets. Lots and lots of bullets. A bullet storm. A buffet of bullets. They non-stop work. They destroy basically every single enemy. They have tons of bullets for dealing with the horde. They can knock around the tripods. They are fun. They are fast. They are effective. There is no reason not to bring one of these, and it will chew through the enemies. I have ended rounds with over 1,000 KOs while doing the objectives with a Stalwart. It is the king of these maps. The jetpack, of course, being able to jump out of danger's way is super important. Mobility is super strong, and it feels really cool. Why wouldn't it be up there? I don't agree with the shield backpack being up here, because as you know, I call it a crutch. I don't think anyone should use it, but I know that people are struggling with the Illuminate. It is a valid way to protect yourself. It does its job, and it's, again, fun to use their own technology against them. Oh, you've got a shield? I do too. However, the handheld shield. If you get the new handheld shield with a one-handed weapon and the stun baton, that is the most crazy fun you are going to have in Helldivers right now. Running into a giant swarm of enemies and beating them with a baton while blocking all their shots and attacks with the handheld shield is so fun, and for that fun factor alone, I have put it in the S tier. The 380 barrage and the laser strike, of course, are simply amazing. I've seen a ton of people struggling with like the heavy encampments because you've got a lot of reinforcements coming. You've got spawning right there. You've got to pop the shields before you blow them down. There is a lot of problems when dealing with those, and this just solves it. Oh, this is a heavy encampment. It's going to take us a lot of lives to break through it, or I could just drop a 380 barrage and take absolutely everything out. Why wouldn't you? I have tested it extensively. The laser does clear a heavy encampment in one go as long as there aren't a ton of enemies spawning in. So if you can sneak up to it, toss it in there, boom, that heavy encampment is gone with 0 resources, 0 fight, and 0 problems. And finally, the Fire Orbital Barrage, one of my personal favorites, probably one of the best additions they have ever added to the game. This is super powerful, especially if you're doing like the Raise the Flag mission. Anytime you're in the urban environment, you talk about, oh no, there's buildings in the way, not for the Fire Barrage. Oh no, the enemies are coming from multiple directions, not for the Fire Barrage. It deals with every situation with grace, poise, and absolute destruction, and there's basically no reason not to bring it. It will wipe the floor with the Illuminate. It is super powerful. Give it a shot. I realize now I missed one in C tier, so let's go back and talk about the AMR. I love the AMR. It just does not bode well for these mission types. Again, you don't have long, clear lanes for firing half the time. You're dealing with swarms, and it doesn't do well with swarms. And there's better weapons for taking down the walkers, so C tier for that one. So there you have it. There is my list for what are the best stratagems to bring against the Illuminate. Again, I fully anticipate this to change here soon. I fully anticipate for them to get to the black hole, for things to come out of said black hole, and for them to have new units and different map types. And this will change as that happens, but I know people have been asking for it, so here it is, my opinion on the best tier lists to bring for the Illuminate as it is now. Of course, as always, put it down in the comments down below how wrong I am. Tell me how you would put other things around here, or my opinions are terrible, and have a blessed day.